before we get into some of the nuts and bolts about the course, I want to talk about art itself and the kind of the why of art. Art's really just an idea. And when I think of an artist, I think of somebody who has an idea about the world. You look out there and you say, I see beautiful colors and I'm going to paint that idea about the world. I see beautiful shapes. I'm going to capture those shapes on a canvas or on paper, and that will be how I talk about the world. And the interesting thing about this idea, it's not just any idea, it's meaningful. And that's my feeling. It's one of the reasons I started art, although I don't think I could have articulated it at the time. And it's certainly one of the reasons I stay in it and teach it, because I think art, like very few things in life, gives meaning to life. We need to have some kind of purpose. And so when I strategize about how to live a good life, I realize that art gives me something that very few things give me. It gives me a chance to not only have something that I love and enjoy, something that's potentially meaningful, but I can pass that on to other people. And that might sound like a little high-spirited there, but just think about it. When you go to a theater, or you walk into a gallery with art, or you open a novel, or you turn on the music, go into that theater. What are you hoping for when you go into that theater? You're hoping you find artwork that's more beautiful, more magical, more spiritual, more deeper than you've ever seen before. You actually hope that artist is doing something that will change your life. When you go into that theater, you watch that movie hoping, or you listen to that play, hoping that by the end of that story, it will have changed your life. We're looking for things that give us grounded meaning, not just diversions. We can have more people like our social media page. We can get a brand new car. We can make more money. It's not going to make us happier. The real joy comes from a sense of meaning, a sense of connection. So think about it. We've got me here and the world around me. I'm in this body. You're out someplace past that camera lens. We feel so often disconnected. Art's a way of connecting back. In fact, one of the ways we think about art in New Masters Academy is the fact that we have the different parts of the body, or the parts of the still life, and then the art is how those parts come together. The still life is not 6 peaches in a pear. It's one still life. The story isn't a bunch of disconnected characters and disconnected scenes. It's one storyline. It's not a bunch of notes. It's one melody. It's not a bunch of steps. It's one dance. Art is the connective tissue of its form. And so if we can get not a color, but all the colors to connect together, to work together, they're harmonious. We've built every art form we have in this connective way, this binary way of taking the separate part and bringing it back into the whole. And we've done that in art because that's our experience and that's our deepest wish in life. I really believe it, that we feel disconnected when we're not happy, and we feel connected when we are happy, when we are joyous, when we have meaning. So art is working with these deep roots, these deep powers here that can really add pleasure to your life. And it's one of the few things in life that if I take my paintings, if I get these little framed characters and I put 30 of them in a gallery, almost every single person in there, if not every single person, is going to walk through those doors hoping I created 30 masterpieces. Now, how often in life does that happen, where everybody around you wants you to succeed? They desperately need you to succeed. They want to walk in and find paintings that are so amazing, it changes their life. They want to come out of that theater having seen a story that is so amazing, it changes their life. It gives them meaning. It shows them a way through the difficult times. When life is tough, it's going to get better. That's what art does for us. So what we're after is that connective tissue. We're going to talk about shapes, how to get all of those separate lines to build a shape, all the separate shapes to build a form, all the separate forms to create a composition. That's art. So that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with something that's fun and enjoyable and a craft and has a set of skills to be learned, but it's something deeper. It's something that moves from here to here. And when it gets down here, there's just nothing like it, frankly. Here's the thing though, that's the good news in a way. That's the exciting kind of pump you up, get you ready for the course kind of information. I've met a lot of people. I'm 6 years old. I've been doing this for 40 plus years. I've stayed in it all that time because I love it, but I've seen so many people leave the art or never begin to do art because it's been too hard. They've been too hard on themselves. And so what we need to do is find a way that art isn't only something that we can create masterful work with, but we can also take the pressure off ourselves so that when we are going through the process, especially when we're just beginning, that it's enjoyable, that we have fun and we don't talk ourselves out of it. We want to do something for ourselves that is kind and sympathetic. In other words, we want a strategy to make art fun. And hopefully the course will be fun for you. But what I want you to do is think about a couple things. And I'm going to give you an example here. If we look at meditation, you quiet things down and you don't necessarily lock out all the thoughts, but you quiet yourself down in some way. And when you get into that quiet place, your brain waves change. They go from the beta, which is waking, what's going to get me, what do I have to do, to the alpha, where you're in a calm state. It's the same pattern that kicks in right before we fall asleep, when we relax out and things get easy and we kind of forget the cares and then we start to slowly drift away. When we meditate well, we get into what's called alpha states. When you can get into that alpha state, that meditative quiet state, the chatter, if doesn't go away, it slows down and you're not as self-critical. And you can relax, your breathing changes. Oftentimes you get into that alpha state. You'll see it sometimes with the instructors when they're doing a demo. All of a sudden they'll go, and you'll kind of feel the relaxation and that stress goes away and their conscious mind moves back a step, and then the unconscious kicks in there and they get into this flow and things start moving. And even if they're talking, they can be talking to you and still it'll come through and you're in this lovely place. And all of a sudden you can, the control room in the demo will say, okay, that's a wrap, we got to stop, we've done it for 2 hours. And you go, wait, I thought that was 15 minutes. So the same sense of release of stress, relaxation, breathing change, loss of time, disconnection to time, that you get in meditation, guess what? You get all those things in art too. You get to that place where you relax out. So what we're going to want to do is try and get to that alpha state. Well, how do you do that? What we really want to do is make sure that we're relaxing out and breathing. In a way, in meditation, breathing is the key, and that can be the key to move into a place in art where you're relaxed and things, you get into that flow, as they call it, all that good stuff that happens there. The real problem is we're oftentimes way too hard on ourselves, and that's whenever I've seen people abandon art, whether it's a career or a hobby, a class, it's because they're too hard on themselves. They can't get past that critical self, that monkey mind that chatters, that goes after you. So what we want to do is come up with a strategy that we can kind of trick ourselves into being in the right frame of mind. And it's not that hard, actually, and I'll explain how. Psychology tells us now that 85% of the population came from a dysfunctional family. You have something in your past that's baggage, that works against you, that subverts you in relationships or jobs or your health or whatever it is. You've got some baggage there it's wounds. It's a wound that hasn't healed. Not only that, 90% of us, if we feel joy, I got a new job, I really drew a great sphere that time. Look at my little child ride a bicycle for the first time. When they have that joy, that great feeling of joy, 90% of them immediately go into a fear response and say, oh, he's riding the bicycle, but what if he gets hit by a car? I got the job, but what if they fire me next week because they realize I'm a fraud, I'm not really as good as my resume suggests. And we start to undermine and we start to break down that joy into fear to prepare ourselves so that we're not so devastated when it does fall apart. That's a strategy. It's a survival strategy. Don't be too happy because it'll be taken away from you. So that's the problem we have. So 85% of the time we start with some damaged goods there, damaged background. So we're not working at full efficiency here for our creative, happy, joyous selves. And 90% of the time when we are creative, happy, joyous selves, we undermine that. So what are we going to do to fix that? Well, we can convince our brain of all sorts of things. What that means is, for the good and the bad, is when we have something horrible that happens to us and we think about it, our brain thinks it's happening again. If we imagine that boss yelling at us, that car that almost hit us because it ran the red light, we go through those same stress responses again and again and again. You sweat, your heart beats, palpitations, all that kind of stuff, dry mouth, all those same things can and will kick in. And so when we get in that pattern of stress, that wears us down. It makes us unhappy, it can make us sick. Meditation is one of the things that helps that. Art is one of the things that helps that. So how do we flip it? How do we trick it in such a way that we can get our imagination, where our brain believes it's real? It doesn't know the difference. It sends the same signals to the body. The body puts out the same adrenaline, hormone, dopamine, whatever it is, the good and bad stuff that kicks in. What we want to do then is have a strategy. We're making that system work for us rather than work against us. And here's how we're going to do it. We want to trick our brain into being kinder. We want to trick ourselves, our ego, into being a good friend to our art self. And here's how I do it. You can come up with your own creative solution, but I'll give you my solution here. Because remember, we tend to be too hard on ourselves, whatever it is. The diet, oh, I ate a cookie, I'm gonna get off the diet because I'm a loser. We tend to be really hard on ourselves. We're almost never that hard on the people around us. We're never that hard on our children. We wouldn't say, you're a lousy human being, you're a rotten kid because you drew the eyes in the wrong place on that little head. You'd say, oh, honey, that's a wonderful drawing. And you'd give this love and support. And then if they wanted it and somehow it seemed appropriate, you might give them a little help with it, but probably not. Probably it would just be all love and support for them, knowing that if you support them now at 5 or 6, when they get to be 25 or 26, they're going to be terrific, and they may have a love of their life that can continue. So we nurture our friends, our family, our mates, our co-workers. We tend to be pretty good with people, and we tend to be way better with people than we are to ourselves. I'm going to come up with a way to be kind to myself. So I'm going to use my vast imagination that we all have, especially we artists, and I'm going to come up with an image that is going to help me do it. So what I want you to do, because this is what I do, but you may come up with something even better. I want you to think of this new young artist that's about to become this part of yourself, this little piece of you that's barely alive. It's just starting to grow inside of you, maybe. I want you, or maybe it's been around for a while, but it hasn't been nurtured, so it hasn't grown as much as it should. I want you to imagine that little child of you, that little artist you, the creative spirit that you are, I want you to imagine that it's a soul fragment that if you want it to stay and you want it to grow and nurture and be powerful, maybe the most powerful part of you, a partner in your life in some way, I want you to imagine that you're going to always give it kindness and love and support. What that means is when you start drawing, okay, the exercise in this beginning course was to draw a cylinder. That is a lousy cylinder. That's a lousy cylinder. That's what we tend to say. It's not near as good as the teacher. If I'm in a classroom, it's not near as good as the classroom, and we tend to kind of want to cover it up so other people don't see it. We're ashamed of ourselves that we didn't do it better. What I want you to do when that happens is try to remember that little soul fragment and stop yourself and say, It could be better, but it could always be better. The teachers could have been better. I've seen better than what the teacher did. I've seen Michelangelo drawings. I was looking at some last night that aren't so good, that are mistakes. That gives me great pleasure, actually. The fact that Michelangelo can do drawings that aren't all that artful all the time. So that's a good thing. We're not always doing our best all the time, and our best will always be a changing goalpost. It will get, the best is here, the best eventually will be up here. Every day, every year, every month, we can get better and better and better. So what I want to do is I want to try and find one thing that I'm proud of, one thing that I can tell that fragile little child, that scared little child inside me, that it's okay and you did great, just like you would for your own little child. You don't have to lie, although you could, but since there's a bigger part of you that's a cynical adult, you'll probably catch it. But find one thing, say, you know, everybody else was drawing in black, I picked this orange, that's really beautiful. I love that color, that was a better choice than what the teacher did. Or this one line was a nice, clean line. I did a good job on that. Last time, both sides were screwed up. So I want you to do that and find, no matter what, find one thing. Or you say, it's a sketch. Now, a sketch is a wonderful word, because sketch means it's practice. You're living in an artist. You can get into that flow. You can drop into those alpha waves, the brain waves, the alpha. And the thing about the alpha waves, when you get into that semi-dream state, that meditative state, that state where you're relaxed and time flows, what happens is that critical self that would attack this drawing isn't around. They're not going to attack it or attack it as quickly. And then you have a chance to slip in the nurturing, the love and compassion, slip that in before the criticism can even get started. So once we start learning to get in the flow and we're not quite so tense and tight because we're having to worry about every step that we're not quite sure of, then we'll start kicking into those states. And you'll notice that state in yourself when that breath gets more relaxed, and you'll get, usually one, for me, it's one big breath and my chest kind of collapses and I can just almost feel the angst, the stress kind of wash out like a wave. If I step in the bathtub, the waves go away from my legs. The stress goes away from my body like that. So try and fool yourself into finding something that's wonderful, because there's something wonderful. It could just be, God, the drawing didn't turn out as well as I could, but isn't it wonderful that I'm doing this rather than stuck on a freeway? Isn't it wonderful I'm doing something for myself, something I've always wanted to try, rather than watching another binge TV show on the network, the reruns I've already seen before. So that's what we're going to try and do. That's what I would suggest you try and do if you want to get the most out of this, and if you want it to be fun. And the thing about fun, joy, love, compassion, the thing about being grateful for whatever you did right, or grateful that you're getting to do this, and we are certainly grateful that you are doing it. The thing about that gratitude, any of the good emotions, the good ones, the love, compassion, gratitude, forgiveness kind of stuff, studies show that when you are putting yourself in the place of the good emotions, the positive emotions, good things happen. The rest of your day tends to go better. Bad incidents don't show up as much. You're not as stressed. You're more efficient at work. The 1%, the super smart, the super successful, the driven to succeed, they use meditation. And so we're going to do our own artful meditation. We're going to get into this passionate silence where we just relax out and receive, and we do it and we don't critique it. We don't pick on it. We love it and hold it and cherish it. And then there can be time later to give it a few suggestions. So anyway, welcome aboard. I hope you enjoy this journey we have. Let's get into the course.
There is a lot of value in online art education. We have so much great instruction on NMA that is so easily accessible. Even when I was in school learning to draw and paint, nothing was online. Wherever you are in the world, you can get this instruction. And not only can you watch these lessons that are so valuable and so in-depth and so passionately instructed, but you can watch them again and again and again.